Good morning children, for 10th standard. Okay. We are going to continue with the chapter on eye. The first thing that we are going to discuss is about the mechanism of the vision. You know, the lens which is in the eye is a convex lens. Now, suppose there is a image object in the distance and object in the near vision. So what happens, the two rays, they come and converge and there is a focus and then an image is formed which is an inverted and diminished image and falls on the retina. The more distinct it falls, the more distinctly we see. So generally from the point of near vision, or what we can say the near point as well as the far point, the object is focused correctly on the retina, and that is how we view. Now there are certain disorders of the eye. The first disorder that we are going to study is about myopia. Now in myopia we call it that this is short-sightedness. That means you can see the near object but you cannot see the far away object. So there is you can see this is a image from the far infinity, that is a far away object. Now that comes and the image is formed in front of the retina. Whereas a near object, that is focused correctly on the retina. So this happens mostly in case of young children. In young children, the lens it cannot thin properly, or the eyeball is too long. That means suppose the normal eyeball is like this, the eyeball lengthens by flattening from top to bottom. So we'll know that what is the cause of myopia. One is the eyeball is too long. This is one of the reasons, and the lens cannot thin to pinpointedly focus the object from far to the retina. So these are the two causes of the myopic eye. And myopia, it occurs mostly in young children. You will see that is the first complaint they make in class, that when they sit in the class they cannot see the board, what is written on the board. So correction is done with help of a concave lens. Okay, so a concave lens is put in front of the eye in form of spectacles, which is a power which is negative. So negative power is put and then it is corrected properly. So this is about myopia. The second is called hyperopia, or it is also known as hypermetropia. Now this is called your long-sightedness. Now what is the meaning? That they can see the far of the object. Suppose from infinity the object is focused correctly on the retina, but something which is in the near point, that is focused beyond the retina. So if it is focused beyond the retina, here you do not get a distinct image. Now that is what is happening in case of old people. When people cross 40 years of age, generally the reason is the eyeball is too short. That means suppose the normal eyeball should be here, this eyeball becomes shortened from this side to this side, so the object is focused beyond the retina. This can be one of the reasons. The second is that lens cannot thicken. That when this is the most probable cases in old age, that when we see an object from near vision, the lens becomes thick. Now that is with the help of the suspensory ligament and the ciliary bodies, which relaxes to make the lens thick. But due to old age, this thickening of the lens cannot take place, so the near object cannot be seen. So in old age, you will see people who are having more than 40 years of age, they cannot read the book properly, or they have a disability to get a distinct vision while reading. That is in the near point. So that is the hyperopia. Now a similar type of thing in hyperopia, the correction is done with the help of a convex lens, and that convex lens has a plus power. So this is about hyperopia. There is another type of disorder which is called presbyopia. Hyperopia can occur in young people also, but presbyopia is same thing happens. The object is placed beyond the retina, but there mainly the thickening, the lens becomes too thickened, or the lens thinning and thickening cannot take this due to old age, because the muscles do not work properly. And in that case also, usually the convex lens are put, that is called presbyopia, which occurs exclusively in old age. Now there are certain disorders like astigmatism. In astigmatism, the cornea becomes too rough, or the lens can become too rough, so the object is not distinctly pointed on the retina. So that a blurred image is there, their correction is done with help of cylindrical lens. In cataract, the lens becomes opaque due to old age or due to certain metabolic disorder, and usually in that case the lens has to be replaced with a synthetic lens or with a high power convex lens. So that is called cataract. Glaucoma is usually caused due to more ocular pressure, and that ocular pressure can cause damage to the eye permanently. Usually, the retinal damage is also done in case of glaucoma. So this few disorders you must know a little bit. And next we are going to discuss about the accommodation of the eye. In accommodation of eye means, the eye has the ability to see a far off thing as well as a near off thing. Now that is done exclusively by the thickening and thinning of the lens. As I told you here that we can see an object which is near, we can read a book. At the same time, if you sit in a bus or a train, you can see a distant object clearly. Now this accommodation, when we do, when we see a near thing, a far off thing, we call it a far accommodation. In far accommodation, usually the lens becomes thin, by the pulling of the suspensory ligament, and the lens becomes thin, we can distinctly see a far off thing. And near accommodation, just the reverse, the lens becomes thickened due to the relaxation of the suspensory ligament. The lens thickens and we can see a distinct object. Now there is a problem associated with it, that some children are there when coming by bus. They read, sometimes the books in their bus or in the train. Sometimes when there is a jerk, there is a constant movement of the object distance, and the lens has to accommodate, accordingly, and that causes headache. So this has to be remembered, that while you are traveling, if the object distance changes, the accommodation is hampered, and that can lead to headache. This also happens in other cases also, if you travel while you are reading, while you are traveling at the same time. Now the next is after vision. After vision is, the object can remain in the eye if it is less than 1/10, if it is more than 1/10 of a second, the brain can visualize an object. If an object moves faster, at a faster rate than 1/10 of an object, we cannot distinctly, distinguish between two frames of picture. And that suppose object is moving at 1/20th of a second or 1/24th of a second. If two photographs are there, you cannot visualize that whose picture it is. But if it is 1/10th of a second or 1/9th of a second or 1/8th of a second, you can distinctly see the picture. Now that is what is the brain can retain, and that is what we call the after image. So in motion pictures, you will see that the movement of object is done with help of this particular theory of the after image. The pictures are moved in front of our eye at faster than 1/10 of a second, and that creates a movement or a motion, feeling of a motion in front of the eye. That's why we see a thing moving in front of the eye when we see a movie. That is what we call a motion picture. That is, with help of this, what we call the after vision or persistence of image. The image retains in the eye if it is more than 1/10 of a second. But if it is less than 1/10 of a second, we cannot visualize it. So sometimes the frames are moved in front of our eye, at speed more than say 1/11th of a second or 1/20th of a second, and that is used in case of motion picture. The last thing that we are going to discuss about dark adaptation and light adaptation. Dark adaptation is something that when we are in lighted area and we go suddenly in a dark area, there are certain changes in the eye which takes place, and that is called dark adaptation. So when you are in a lighted area, the rhodopsin is placed and the diopsin is activated. Now this rhodopsin is activated when you move from a lighted area to a dark area. That is what we call in the dim light vision. So when you move out from a light area to a dark area, what happens that suddenly it becomes very dark, but after that you seem to visualize things. Suppose you go inside a cinema hall from a lighted area to the dark room, then it is very difficult to see. You will see it is pitch dark, but slowly and slowly you can see the objects, that is because the rhodopsins get regenerated, that helps you to get the dim light vision. And that is what we call the dark adaptation, that the rhodopsin gets regenerated and we are able to see in the dim light. Now those who don't have this dark adaptation, they suffer from a disorder what we call the night blindness. Okay, night blindness occurs due to deficiency of vitamin A, which is one of the main ingredients for making the rhodopsin or the retinol. So that is all about dark adaptation. Light adaptation is just the reverse. When you are in dark room and suddenly you go into light, you will see the light seems to be very bright, and that is what we call light adaptation. Now that is because as soon as we go from dark into the light, the pupil which was very wide, the aperture was big, it cannot become narrow. So the more light enters into the eye, and that creates a bright vision. So you have to tell these two answers, that in light adaptation and dark adaptation. In dark adaptation, the pupil is in the lighted state, it is wider. When you go to the dark, it cannot become narrow, aperture cannot become narrow very quickly, and that is why we cannot see, less light enters into the eye, and also we have to answer in point of view of the rhodopsin gets regenerated. In light adaptation also same thing, you will see, you have to tell that the rhodopsin gets bleached, and also in case of light adaptation, the pupil which was wider, it cannot become narrow quickly. So that's why more light enters into the eye, and that gives a more, as if a feeling of more light into the eye. So these are the two things you have to learn here about light adaptation and dark adaptation. So all these things you go through the chapter, and you have any question, you can ask that question, and I'll be happy to answer those questions. Thank you very much and take care.